Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to me, which is property management. And this is primarily what I have done most of my career. However, I had 8 years doing corporate real estate. I had 4 years being a commercial broker. But most of the rest of the time, and I've done consulting work, most of the rest of my time has been purely in property management. And sometimes it's good days and bad days. Today was a good day. We put up a Christmas tree, and we'll be lighting it. It was a 30-foot tree, so it was quite I wore my Christmas colors today. I was ready. But primarily, I'm handling tenant complaints. I'm requests, we call them, in a nicer practice. But as a property manager, you're there to take care of the properties for the owners. It's your job to make the property a better place. Literally increase its value, make it a better place after you've been there. Kind of like the Girl Scout, Boy Scout motto. You feel like you left it a better place than when you started. And so that's kind of my way of saying I've done my job. There's plenty to do in property management. Involves leasing, managing, marketing, overall maintenance of real estate, and rental property typically. But a lot of property management positions do require you to have a real estate license. So for me, it was a starting point, and the reason I got my real estate license, because I wanted to go in this career. So we're going to talk about various property management specialties. We'll talk about essential elements of property management, and then we're going to talk about responsibilities of the property manager. That's why I said some days I feel like all I'm there for is the complaints, the requests, and then get special projects put on me too. We'll talk about various federal laws. Because it's property management, because it's real estate, we have fair housing, we have Equal Credit Opportunity Act, we have other things that we're bound by, things that we have to recognize as we're doing our business. We're also going to talk about risk management. What's risk management? When I talk about risk management, what comes to mind? Compliance. What else? Risk management. Insurance. Okay, so when there's a disaster in the middle of the night, who do you think they call first? Me. I go to bed with this by my bed at night, my cell phone, but I put it away from my bed. My glasses are on top of it so that I will stand up and I can read it, because I can't read it half the time without my glasses. But I make sure I stand up in the middle of the night, so when I get calls, it's kind of like I'm aware of what I'm doing, because if I would lay down in bed and take that call, I'd be going, you did what? What just happened? Okay. So I am the first call in the middle of the night, and I'll show you some pictures. I had a break into the property Saturday at one of my retail centers. Somebody broke in. Who knew? Things happen. So we're going to talk about risk management, and that's also one of the things about this break-in that happened. I have risk management things that I have to do, liability, insurance, things that we have to think about, so that we're managing the property right for the owners, so that somebody doesn't come back and say we were guilty, we were negligent in how we managed something that could come back on us. Property manager, we get to achieve the objectives of the property owners. Who are my property owners? You know, that's the first thing you want to know. Who are they? Are they a REIT? Are they a private owner? Are they some kind of corporation? Are they the company you work for? A lot of property owners are the company you work for. They own real estate because it was a natural way for them to go into it, just literally to buy their office or whatever, but they know nothing about real estate, or they know nothing about property management. So what are their objectives of the property owners? When you work for a large company, typically it's an income statement. It's very much numbers driven. The people I report to are asset managers. In property management, no matter where you're at, it's going to be asset managers or ownership. And depending upon who they are, they're extremely number oriented. They're looking at the bottom line. They don't always pay for the things to be done right the first time, because they're very bottom line oriented, and sometimes it's your job as a property manager to educate them why you pay a little bit more to get it done right the first time rather than having to redo it. And I've got examples of that too. Their primary objective is to generate income. Why do people buy income producing property? Why do they buy investment property? They're hoping to get income. The other day, if you listened on the news, General Electric just lowered their dividend by 50%. Instead of 22 cents a share, now they're down to 11 cents a share. But if you're somebody that's an older person and you're buying stocks for income to get the distributions, you got hit. You know, it's $240 for 1,000 shares. You got to own a lot of shares to get that money. But if you're buying the stock to get income, when dividends are reduced, your income's reduced. You buy property to get income. The income we get is the cash after the property, after you pay all your bills, after you pay the mortgage, is the cash you generate off the property, the cash flow. So you're trying to have property to generate cash flow. When my parents bought a piece of income producing property, they bought a two-family, they weren't really buying it to generate cash. They were buying it for a tax shelter. So that's the other thing you have to look at. Why are people owning it? Is it to generate as much cash as they can? For my parents, it was a tax shelter. By investing in income producing property, they were able to depreciate property and able to write expenses off. So what's the owner's objectives? We want to generate income for them. We want to preserve or increase the value of the investment property. My Girl Scout, Boy Scout kind of a thing. When I've been at the property, I want to leave a lasting positive mark on the property I've managed. What have I done good for the property that'll carry it on in the future? Sometimes it might just be, repaving a property, putting a new roof on a building. We're going to take care of the concrete breezeway. We'll do some kind of finish to the breezeway. So again, what am I going to leave? The lasting mark. The management agreement. This is something my boss tells me all the time. What does your management agreement tell you you can do? So my question a couple weeks ago is I want to buy new garbage cans for the shopping center. The garbage cans are $750 a piece. She says, what's the management agreement say you have authority to spend? Well, I can spend up to $2,000 without getting asset manager approval, but if I didn't put it in the budget, I got to get asset management approval, even though it's going to be $1,500. So the management agreement will have a property description. What's the property you're managing? Okay, most of our real estate contracts, when we have a property description, an address is fine. For me, it's the name of the shopping center. It might be the name of the apartment complex. That's the property description, street address, things like that. Sometimes at the very end, you might have a complete legal description, but the legal description is not required in this contract. The time period. This is a contract. In order for contracts to be valid, they have to have a beginning and ending date. Our contracts are one-year agreements, and they renew month to month basically after that. So right now I'm working without a contract period. We just keep going on, and that's very typical. So in the property management world, our jobs can end in 30 days. If a property is sold, we don't go with the property. We belong to the property manager. We contract with the property, but our contract agreement is with the property owner. If they sell the property, we literally could be selling ourselves out of a job. And that's part of what this is all about. Our management responsibilities are spelled out in our agreement. What are we required to do? How much money will we have to work with? If I have to spend more than $2,000, I have to get two bids. If I have to sign a contract that's $5,000 or more, I have to have three bids in writing, and I have to show them my bids. This is not uncommon stuff to have to chase contracts down to show somebody what you're doing. I'm supposed to handle requests. I should be timely in my requests. I shouldn't make a tenant wait for more than 24 hours to get back to them to take care of what they need. So the kinds of things I'm going through, this would be typical whether it's residential or commercial. These are things that are expected of a property manager to do, to take care of their tenants, make their tenants feel like they're valuable commodity, they're valuable commodities in the property. If we didn't have tenants, our bills wouldn't be paid. So by taking care of our tenants, making sure our tenants pay their rent, they're paying for our fee. So management responsibilities, again, pay all my bills, do monthly reporting. My boss will tell you I'm not really good with some of the economics of the income statement and things like that, and the way I have to do it every single month for every property. But I have to pull the reports out of the system. We use different property management software depending upon what property we work on. My property owners have decided they want to, the managers and owners have decided they want to use one type of software. Actually, I have an accounts receivable book system, and then I also have accounts payable system. More passwords to remember, all these things you got to log in to get into. But different property managers may have systems set up, owners may have systems set up. There's software that you can buy today. Literally, if you buy a $4,000 or $5,000 package of software, you can manage a couple hundred properties. You could literally individual properties. You've got access to bank accounts. You can be pulling income statements in the financial statements with that many properties off of a $4,000 or $5,000 piece of software. It's pretty easy to do these days. So what's the owner's purpose and responsibility? Why does the owner own this property? What are they trying to gain from it? The extent of my authority, If I've got a middle of the night emergency, what am I authorized to do? I can spend what I have to in the middle of the night emergency. I got to take care of it. I do what I need to do. But I better call somebody next and tell them what's going on. We have a chain, like a phone chain that we do if there's going to be an event that might have reporters or the news involved. We have a phone chain of people that we have to reach out and contact that eventually gets to a PR person, a marketing person, that'll write that for us. Disaster recovery. Last thing you want to think about is when there's a disaster for property, what are you going to do? But we have disaster recovery plans for all the properties. Boring stuff, not fun. But when you have an emergency, if you've already got this stuff in writing and you know what to do, it sure helps a whole lot. It helps you have a game plan. The compensation. What do you make in management fee? We talked last week, Andrew, you talked about, somebody managing a property. What do they want for that? It's a small property. It's, 10% is not out of range. When you manage a large property, it might be 2% of the gross collected income. Properties I manage, we get 1.5%. But I'm managing multi-million-dollar properties. So that 1.5% of multi-million-dollar properties is still quite a chunk of change. Reporting, what are you required to report every month? What are you required? How do you do it? Do you have to meet with the owner periodically to give them reports? How is this all going to go on? That's all part of this contract, what they expect you to do. Allocation of costs, that's part of the budgeting process. How you're allocating costs, keeping track of things. Our property owners expect us to have good accounting teams, to understand what the accounting is required, to be able to give them the documents that they can then turn over to their personal accountants to do their taxes. So we have to know how to allocate costs by generally accepted accounting principles, the GAAP method. Liability, what do we need to do to protect against liability? Antitrust provisions. I don't go to an Institute of Real Estate Management meeting. I don't go to a Building Owners and Managers Association meeting and talk with the other property managers and say, we're going to all charge 2% for what we do. It's like going to the Board of Realtors saying, we're all going to charge 6% for commission. We don't have those conversations. We generally know what the accepted practices are. We know what the accepted practices are based on how we bid on contracts. We know what's going on in the area, in the neighborhood, and what we're doing. But we don't talk to our competitors about what's the agreed upon pricing. So we have antitrust issues that we got to do. Equal opportunity statements, what are we doing, to make sure we're doing things right with how we treat people, how we treat our customers and our clients. Okay, so the property manager responsibility. We have to form a management plan. Sometimes a management plan can be a written book. When I went to get my certified property manager designation, that's what we were charged with doing. We went to a property we'd never seen. We studied it. We were there for a week. We had 60 days to write a management plan. The management plan was, what's the property as it sits today? What do we need to do with it? If we don't do anything, how does it budget? If we do a projected change in use or construction or whatever, what's our new projected budget? We had to project all that. And again, and make a full report in 60 days. And that time, what I turned in was an inch binder full of papers. So a management plan can be a total, what am I going to do? Today, my management plan is simply a budget with a 5-year projection of my capital improvements. What do I think needs to be done capital improvements on property? I've got 2 properties that are 2 years old. What do I need to do for capital improvements for them in the next 2 years? I certainly don't need a roof. I don't need parking lot and asphalt. I'll probably just do tenant finish work. But I got a property that was built in 1994. I got another property that was built in 2003. Guess what? 5 to 7 years from now, they're going to need new roofs. One of them I'm doing a new roof on right now. So it depends upon the age of the property, what's going to have to happen. That roof we're putting on a property now is a $900,000 roof. It's not a small job. And so, again, we create a management plan. We create a budget, financial reports I got to do every month. We help set rental rates. How do we help set rental rates? We go out and shop the market. What is our competitor? What's the property like us getting? What are they asking? That's how we set rental rates. We'll do some marketing for the property. I actually have a leasing and marketing person. I don't do the leasing marketing for the property. We have another division that does that. Smaller properties, we may have to do it all. I do have a marketing budget for things I can do for one of the properties where I get tenant contributions. Otherwise, The other 3 properties I have, there's no marketing budget per se on what we're going to do with the property, but that's part of today, putting up a Christmas tree and making Christmas decorations. That property has a marketing budget. They want to spend money to do some things. And again, that's because of how that center was built. It's always been run that way. Do we do Christmas? We don't at all the properties. Again, if you're managing an apartment community, if it's a large enough, they got a clubhouse that's the management office and the rental center. They may decorate it like crazy for Christmas. It's totally up to them how they're going to want to do that and what they're proposing and what kind of money are they willing to spend. A couple years ago, I ran some buildings in Dayton. The owner wanted to spend $20,000 on Christmas lighting the building, literally lighting the building. Today, I spend a couple thousand. So $20,000. Again, that's what the property owner chose to do. That's how they wanted it done. We just said, okay, who do you use? What do you want done? How do you do it? What do you think we're going to do? So we let the owner set the goal there to do that. What is our management activities that we're doing on a regular basis? What's marketing and advertising costs? What's our budget? What do we have to work with? How are we going to spend it? Sometimes we're involved in selecting tenants. With apartment communities, that's a big piece of the job is the leasing office, managing and leasing the apartment communities. Do you have objectives that say we have certain income guidelines that we work with for somebody to be able to afford to rent here? What's the ratios that we'll work with to let them come in? What kind of credit report do they have to have? What are the qualities we're looking for of our tenants? Again, that's part of the selecting tenant process. Collecting rents. This is my biggest headache, literally. I have to collect rents. If the rents aren't paid by a certain day of the month, I'm allowed to charge late fees. But I have tenants that customarily owe a couple $1,000s for a reconciliation, and it'll take me all year to get through the reconciliation to sit down with them to go through it. We're at the end of the year already, and I still have several tenants we haven't done that with. We're trying to get them to pay bills. I heard from one today. It was like, hey, there's a body. There's somebody that exists. But now I got to sit down with them over the next few weeks and get through this accounting with them so we can collect the money. Maintain good relations with tenants. Again, respond to them. Be prompt. Acknowledge their problems, their concerns. Take care of their problems and concerns. Have to maintain the property to see that things are maintained and the property looks good. My husband walked through the center where my office is. Again, it was built in 2003, and he pointed out some things where he thinks some things look a little tired. And he's right. They look a little tired. So we put some things in the budget that we think should be done, haven't been done for a while, and we'll see if the budget gets approved. Went out and got bids and estimates to do these projects. They're in the budget. If they get approved for next year, then I can start to do them. If they don't, then I'll just put them in the next year's budget. We'll wait and do them. Environmental concerns, managing property. If you have an office building that has medical users, you have major environmental issues with how do they do needle pickup, what are they doing with their drugs, things like that. Other environmental concerns years ago with HVAC systems. What's the gas that they're using to charge their HVAC systems? On an older center, older units are still using old gas to charge the Freon charge. So we're concerned about that. How are they recapturing? What are they doing? What's that environmental on the property? When a property, our tenants, we want to get a tenant out and we tear apart the space to get it ready for the next tenant. What are we doing with all that stuff we removed from the property? Fortunately, 2 of my centers, like I said, are 2 years old. There's no lead, there's no asbestos. They were built long after those products were ever used. But I have a center that was built in the early 90s. Yeah, there shouldn't be lead paint because lead paint was outlawed at the late 70s. But there is asbestos from when the building was built. So there's still things like that that we look at, and we're always looking at. The chemicals we use to maintain the property. What our janitorial supplier might use. We've always got to get MSDS sheets on what they're doing, how they're taking care of the property. I have federal laws that prohibit discrimination. So, fair housing, that's at the top of our list. We go through the same kind of fair housing training that a realtor goes through. We need to recognize what fair housing guidelines are. When we're working with tenants for commercial properties, it's black and white. It's all about the income. Do they qualify? What do they do? We don't care about their nationality, their religion. We want to make sure they're the right tenant mix, that they qualify financially to come into the center. Other than that, we don't care about who they are or what they do. We just want to make sure they fit. When we have tenants coming into apartments, again, how many bedrooms do you need? How big of a family do you allow to move into your apartments based on how many bedrooms you have? You're going to set those guidelines. The community can help you set those guidelines too. If you have a 2-bedroom apartment complex, does that mean you'll accept a family with 2 kids? Do you have spouses and 2 kids? Is that what 2 bedrooms means? You need to find out. What are you allowed to do? What are you allowed to say no to? Equal credit opportunity. This applies in residential and commercial. If we turn somebody down because their credit report, we have to tell them where we got the credit report from and give them an opportunity to go fix that credit report with that agency. Doesn't mean we have to do a deal with them. We can tell them your credit is bad. We don't want to do this, but here's the agency that gave us the information. So we ask for those kind of financials, whether they're commercial or residential clients, customers. We're asking for financials on them. The ADA, American with Disabilities Act. Okay, Andrew, you're looking at a property. What is it? How many apartments is it? How many floors does it have? And how do we get into the building? Do we have to go up steps to go into the building? Huh? Okay, to go into the first floor apartment, do we have to go up steps or through something to get there? It's ground level. So that ground level apartment, could somebody in a wheelchair literally roll into it right now? Okay, but they could wheel into it. Is the doorway wide enough to wheel through? It's got to be bigger than 36 inches. They need about 39, 40 inches to literally go through it, unless they've got an electric wheelchair. You've got to give them enough room to get their arms to roll wheels and not bang their arms. So that door is wide enough. That door back there is not. So those are things we're looking at for accessibility issues. Is the door wide enough to get through? Okay, so we have a ground floor apartment now. 5 units is not enough where he has to do ADA, but he also can't say no to somebody that has issues. If somebody wants to live there, he can say, ground floor is fine. I don't have a way to get you upstairs, but you're more than welcome to make modifications to your ground floor unit to make it work for you.
So the 5th apartment is one of the time stuff on the vacant right now. So like if that person wanted to live in the top floor, what do I have to do?
Nothing. You physically don't have to do anything. You have to give them the right to do something. So how would they get up there? Would they have to put a chairlift in? Literally, if they're in a wheelchair, would they need to put a chairlift in? Okay, so this is probably not practical for a 5-family building, but you as a landlord don't have to pay for that. But if you have a person of need that wants to live there and they're willing to pay for this stuff, you allow them to do it. You're meeting fair housing guidelines. You're allowing them to come in. You're meeting the ADA requirements. You're saying you're more than welcome to come in. You can put a chairlift in. You can modify the bathroom. You can literally take the tub out, put a big shower stall in so you can roll in. You can modify with rails and things like that you'll need in the bathroom to care for yourself. You can put kitchen counters lower. You can make them so that you can roll under them. You can do all kinds of things as an apartment dweller. You as the person with a disability can pay for it, do it. And I don't mind if you do it, but number one, I want to make sure you're doing it right. You may have to use contractors that I tell you to use. You might have to use an architect that I tell you to use to make the design. If you hire your own contractors, I want lien waivers. I want to know they've been paid, that they're not going to lien my property. And when you leave, I expect you to restore the building back to an original condition. Huh? Okay, but it's a lot. We don't know what this person with a disability has for money. It's not our business, other than the fact that they make enough money they can pay the rent. We don't know if they've been awarded a settlement from some kind of a claim that cost them their injury, and now they've got money that they can live on to make modifications. That's not our business. Not our business. But what we're saying is you can make these modifications to my building, but you have to restore it back. Now, most of the modifications they make are improvements. We really don't want them to restore it back. We want to look at, but we have the right to ask them, okay, my niece has a mother-in-law that's wheelchair bound. She's in an apartment where they've modified it so that the kitchen counters under counters are missing in a lot of areas. Everything's really low. I like it. I'm short. I can work in her apartment. But the typical person is not going to want to live there. It's not a rentable unit for my husband who's 6 foot tall because everything's been lowered. So her apartment, if she had done the work, her requirement would be to put it back. Now what happened is she found a unit that had already been modified. That's what she signed a lease on. She doesn't have to go back in and modify it back to anything. It was already there. But when you own, let's say you own a 12 family, you have a physical requirement to make some of those accessible. Today, if you build a brand new building, that's part of building code. You have to do accessible units. But if you have an older building, it's hard to do modifications to bring things up to standards. But you allow your tenants to do things. You make modifications where you can. If you're going to spend a lot of money to rehab a building, the building department will come in and say, you need to put this percentage toward ADA modifications. They can tell you that from a building perspective, building code, how much money you're spending on it. So what you have to do, again, reasonable modifications. Cutting a new doorway in. Physically, is it possible? It might be. It might not be if you have major columns in the building where that door was built and you have small hallways. But if it's reasonably accommodating, you as a landlord can afford to do it, then they ask you to do it. You do it in your good conscience. You're trying to help out. But if you don't have the money, you hadn't planned on spending that money, you let the tenant spend the money. Let them modify it to their needs, but oversee what they're doing. Risk management. Okay, so here's the deal about risk management. It's insurance. How many of you drive a car? How many of you have insurance on that car? Everybody should raise their hand. Okay, when you have insurance on the car, how many of you have full coverage?
Yes.
Which means you're going to repair your car if it gets damaged. How many of you just have liability? Because you got a turn of a car, you don't care if it gets damaged. It's not worth the money to spend on insurance to have it fixed. If it, okay, so you can drive anybody's. But so if the car gets damaged, you're taking a calculated risk as to whether you want to pay insurance to fix it or whether you're going to fix it yourself. Okay, so with that, you have choices when you buy insurance. You can avoid a risk management problem. In other words, you want a swimming pool, or you look at it. Okay, you look at a house that has a swimming pool. You really like that swimming pool, okay, and you want to use that swimming pool. But by using that swimming pool, you have what we call I'm trying to think what it's called. You're inviting kids to come in. It's an inviting nuisance. You're inviting people to come in and get hurt at your swimming pool. So, do you go ahead and buy that property with a swimming pool, or do you say, you know what? I like that pool, but I certainly don't want to pay all the money to maintain it. I don't want the risk of having an attractive nuisance to invite people to come in. I'm not going to buy that house with a pool. I'll go to another house. I'll buy something else instead. So I'm going to avoid the issue entirely. I'm not going to buy that house. I can control it. That swimming pool has issues. They make us put up a fence around the swimming pool. That fence can't have openings that are wide enough for a kid to stick their head in. The fence around it has to be a certain, width and all those kind of things. But I put a big enough fence up. I have pool alarm monitors. So if something drops in the pool, the alarms go off. I mean, owning a pool today is a huge liability. If you're an apartment community and you want to have a swimming pool because it helps you get tenants, that's great. But it's a heck of a liability. You got to maintain it. You got to take care of it. And you've got this whole liability. So I'm going to control. I'll control what's done. I'll put a fence around it. I'll have alarms. I'll do all kinds of things. So I want to transfer the risk. We buy insurance. We transfer the risk. We're paying somebody a property, a liability policy, whatever. So if there is an accident on the property, that other company is going to take care of it. So we're transferring the risk. Anytime you buy insurance, you're doing a transfer. You're assuming some of the risk, but you're also transferring risk. So when you choose the limit of liability, when you choose your deductible, those are all choices of your control or your transfer. How much you're willing to absorb of your own control. I can have a $500 liability. I can have a $1,000 liability. That's my control. But whatever I'm taking on, the next piece is what I'm transferring over. I'm buying an insurance policy for. I can also retain the risk. People retain the risk. They're self-insured. A lot of companies are self-insured. They're self-insured to a certain number of $1 million. Then over $1 million, they might buy an umbrella liability policy. But they can take care of the first piece of it. The properties I manage, They have a $5,000 or $10,000 deductible at least. Okay, so somebody broke into a Verizon Wireless store this weekend. They went through the vacancy next door. They literally busted into my vacancy. With saws, they cut out the drywall and went into the side of their store. And they brought saws. They were trying to saw into the safe. When the store manager opened the store Saturday morning, they left. Thankfully they left. He didn't get hurt. He didn't catch anybody. That's kind of what's going on. But the store doesn't have a burglar alarm, so nobody was called. I don't have burglar alarms. I don't have burglar alarms on my vacancies. It's a raw space. It's never been built. It's got an air conditioning unit hanging in the ceiling. It's got a partial concrete floor. It's got a gravel floor in the back, so somebody can install their own new plumbing for their restrooms or restaurant or whatever they're going to build there. But it's raw space. You can see all the studs. You can see the pan, see the ceiling, everything. It's raw. Huh?
Does Verizon have an alarm?
Verizon did not have a burglar alarm.
Wow.
So a manager comes in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and
the people are still
the
there?
people leave.
So they wanted how long?
He didn't catch them, but he could still smell. By the time the sheriff showed up, they could still smell the burning of where they cut wood and cut metal to try to get into the building. Okay, so the police fill out their report. The policeman calls me a couple hours after it's happened, and he says, well, we think they broke in the back door into the vacancy, came in the back door, cut holes. I got pictures of all. They cut 4 holes before they found a hole to literally go through and crawl through. And then when the manager showed up, they left out the back door again. Okay, so I get my maintenance guy to go over yesterday, and my lockbox on the front door is missing. We think they literally came in with the key. They took the lockbox off the building, broke into the lockbox, used the key to come in. Okay, so number one, I'm thinking, well, thank God they didn't break the plate glass. I would have had a mess. Thank God he didn't catch them, because he could have been shot, killed, or whatever, or harmed. So those are good things that happen. So what do I need to do? I need to change the locks. I need to look at getting a burglar alarm for my vacancy. I absolutely do not want a burglar alarm for my vacancy. I get calls all kinds of hours of day and night just because my fire alarms and smoke detector alarms go off all the time. Stupid stuff. When we have weather problems or stuff like that, they act up. The last thing I want is a darn burglar alarm.
Sometimes you get cameras.
Well, Verizon did have a camera.
Ooh,
We don't know what they saw yet. It's all being analyzed by their home office. We'll figure out, see what happens. It'll take me a week to get a police report. In the meantime, I have to fill out an incident report. I have to tell my insurance company what happened. So I've got to inform everybody. I got an estimate to fix the wall. It's only going to be $832 to do my side of the wall. They tore out all the insulation. They tore out a couple studs. They tore out, literally cut open holes through drywall. I got to patch the drywall, mud it, sand it, tape it to get it back to original. What Verizon's cost is on the other side, I imagine it'll be several $1,000s by the time they come in, finish the walls, repaint them, and do all the stuff they got to do. But Verizon's responsible for their own piece. My boss seems to think that Verizon should pay for all of it. My risk manager said, my operations manager said, I don't think so. Verizon's going to expect you to pay for it. And they may take you to court as a property manager because somebody came in their space through a vacancy.
Yeah.
Through the property you control. Yes, but they came in through the vacancy and then they cut into their space. Somebody had free reign in the vacancy to cut walls open. And they knew exactly where they were going. They cut in the back of the store. They didn't cut into the front. They had a targeted area they were going into, but they hit the first hole. We think it was an inside job. Maybe not somebody that worked at that Verizon, but somebody that knows how Verizon is set up. Gets the general operator. I mean, they left, and when they left so quick, they left their saws and everything there. Well, we'll see what happens over the next week of investigation. But in the meanwhile, I have concerns. I have concerns on what do I need to do to protect the property owner so we're not found responsible for this. Now, again, that's why we have attorneys. That's why we have risk control people. They're the professionals. They'll take care of all that. I'll get bids for getting a burglar alarm system. I don't think anybody's going to pay to install it, but I'll go ahead and go the next step. I've got the locks changed already, and I've got a new lock box that I'm putting on the door. But somebody comes in like this, whether I had a lockbox hanging on the door, whether I had a Knox box in the wall, they had equipment with them. They were going to break into whatever. Fortunately, they came in through the door rather than breaking something, breaking glass or something like that. This would have happened. Now, this Verizon did get held up by gunpoint last year before I was involved with the property. So, hey, this is in Frankfort, Kentucky. It's a real pretty little area, a nice upscale shopping center. But you never know what's going to happen. And that was my comment when I sent the picture over the asset manager. Well, it all happens in a day. You know, what's going to happen? It's a time of year. People do. Who knew that cell phones were as valuable as jewels? And they are. Some people think they are. Yes. And I do know that I've got an AT&T store there. I've got a Sprint store. I've got a wireless store. I've got 3 cell phone stores in that center there. And the AT&T store that was built this spring, he actually put a special room in to store the phones in to lock the phones up. Every night, they take all their phones and they put them in this little room. They're on display, but then they also that's where they keep their inventory, in a locked room. So somebody's got to sign in and go out. Yeah, it's a little panic room. It's amazing, though, what people do. So we have issues. I have liability issues. I have things I have to look at now. Who knew? That's like, hey, what did I just wake up to today? That's part of the fun of property management. I get to wear a few different hats just for that. And that all happened Saturday. So fun stuff. So I got security tenants I got to worry about. We don't tell our tenants that they have to get burglar alarms. I have fire life safety stuff that I have to do at the building. Like I said, I get calls all hours of the day and night when those darn alarms go off because I'm the first person to call. I have to do fire life safety. It's up to the tenants to do their own burglar alarms, whatever they want to do. The reason we don't tell them they have to do a burglar alarm because as soon as the burglar alarms break, it'll be my problem. We don't tell them they have to do that kind of stuff. But what we're required to do, when you have an apartment complex in a neighborhood, and all the apartment communities around you have locked gates that people literally have to come into to get into the apartment complex, but your little apartment complex doesn't have that, something tells you better get a locked gate. You need to do what everybody, your neighbors immediately around you are doing. Make your property equivalent to what they're doing in terms of security. That's your responsibility. You don't have to go way over and above what they're doing, but for minimum, you need to do everything that people around you are doing. What are the properties around you doing to maintain security? So those are things you need to look at for security tenants. Everybody that works at your property should have criminal and background checks because you're giving a maintenance person keys to go into an apartment. You're giving that person keys to go into somebody's private area.
So what are you looking for?
Criminal background check?
Yeah, I mean, is it a felony? Is it a certain type of?
That's up to the company. What they want to do is their standard. It's totally up to the individual company. But will we look for sexual predators? Will we look for people with felonious assault? Yeah, absolutely. We're going to roll them out. But again, security tenants, you're giving, I don't have master keys to go into every single space. That's how shopping centers are set up. We don't have the tenant keys. We have Knox boxes on most of the doors. So if there's a fire emergency or whatever, the fire department shows up, they have a way to get into their little key box and get a key. If their little key box and the key doesn't work, guess what the fire department's going to do? Break the door down. But we at least give them a key so they can go in without causing major money damage. If I got to get in, I've got to call somebody at the tenant and say, let me in. But I don't have master keys. In an office building, I had a grandmaster that got me into everything. I keyed the building so I could get into every single room. Grandmaster. I had fire department keys on the outside of the building in the Knox box that were grandmasters, that they could come in through the building and go wherever they had to go. Again, so there's the least amount of damage that has to happen. But at that office building, I had a security system set up. We locked the doors at night. We had a security system in the building at night. Retail is a little different. For commercial warehouse buildings, it's very different. For apartment communities, very often you're going to have security to come into the vestibule area, but then once somebody gets by the vestibule, the first entry, they have free reign to go through the building. You pretty much give your tenants that. You expect them to have that. They want to be able to go to the common areas. They want to be able to go to the pool room, the party room, whatever. But they've got to have decent locks on their doors. And again, when I go into tenant apartments, I usually have a master key or I have some kind of key that'll get me in all my tenant apartments. So what you do and how you key it, that's all part of this whole security issue. What are you responsible for as the property manager? You got to think about all this stuff. Insurance. All of our tenants have to have insurance. Again, when you have residential tenants, you want to have them show you proof of renter's insurance before they move in. Make sure they give you proof of renter's insurance every year when they renew their lease. That way you're sure that they have some kind of coverage for their personal property. Because when a fire destroys the building, a storm destroys the building, you don't care about their personal property. You don't care about their apartment. As a property manager, your job is to fix the building, not their stuff. But you want to know they have insurance so that they can take care of fixing their stuff. Commercial insurance, commercial properties, again, a whole different matter, the way I have to insure what I do. In an office building, when a tenant has insurance, they name me additionally insured. All of their employees, all of their invitees, anything happens to anybody coming through the property, they have to take care of it. It's a claim against the tenant. With commercial retail properties, their customers trip and fall on the sidewalk, it's a claim against us as the property management company. Even though the tenant has insurance and names them additionally insured, their customers are in common areas. I got to maintain the common areas. Their employees, that's a different matter. When their employees get hurt on the property, that's their problem. That's why they got workers' comp. So every month, I got to go through my certificates of insurance, and I'm updating it every month to make sure my tenants and my vendors have insurance to cover the property. And I'm requesting it constantly. I keep a running list every month, exercise I got to go through. Claims. Okay, so today I'm going to file, actually tomorrow morning, I'll file an incident report of what happened this weekend. The reason I'm waiting for a couple days, I got an estimate to get it fixed. That came through late today. My boss is going to review my report tonight. I had to talk to our operations people to make sure I didn't say things wrong in the report the way I shouldn't have said them. So I'll get it reviewed before I submit it to the insurance company. We're submitting to the insurance company on behalf of the property owners. It's their insurance company, but we want to make sure we're doing it right. Because guess what? It'll go to a lawsuit, but it'll take 2 or 3 years to do the lawsuit. So we'll come back later and have to dig through records to get our paperwork together. And I'm doing that now. I get claims that happened 2 or 3 years ago, and I've got to dig through files to see what I can find for evidence on behalf of the property owner or whatever. Not uncommon. Okay, so that's it for property management. Any questions? This is just the down and dirty of daily property management. It's a lot of work to do.